from LifterLMS. We're just getting ready to start this podcast. So while you're waiting, go ahead and hit the like button. And Brian and I are going to get started here in just a moment. Just waiting for the live stream to pop up. We're just getting ready to start this podcast. So let me get that tweeted and we are going to rock this thing. So if you look for my Twitter, make sure I tag you, and then thanks folks. We will get started right now. So hello and welcome back to another episode of LMS Cast. My name's Chris Badgett and I'm joined by a special repeat guest. His name is Brian Casel. He's a serial entrepreneur. His project called ZipMessage, I'm absolutely in love with. It's what we're going to talk about today. It's the game changer of video messaging and asynchronous communication. I wanted to bring Brian on because this is a tool that can be really helpful to coaches or teachers, experts, and also anybody who really works in tech or manages a remote team like an agency. Before we go deeper, welcome to the show, Brian.
Hey, Chris, how's it going? I'm just actually retweeting you now for this live stream. And all right,
that's awesome. So if you're watching this today, you're early because this isn't actually going to go live for a little bit. So consider this a sneak peek. My understanding of ZipMessage is that it's kind of like if you could use video in email, which is asynchronous or not happening at the same time. People can collaborate, but not necessarily be immediately together. What would be you make that possible with video, and you also remove all the friction that comes with that. Like you can't put video in an email, but just at a high level, what problem does this solve?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great way to put it. That's definitely one of the ways that I think about it, right? Because we've all been doing async communication for many, many years. I mean, email is probably the one that really goes the furthest back, right? You've got text
email's
messages.
Not dead. Like
of course it's not. No way at all.
Right.
You know, but the thing with email in a lot of situations is you don't have the fidelity, right? You don't have the face-to-face interaction, the video, like let me show you what I'm seeing, or let me give you my facial expressions, that sort of thing, right? So usually when you need that sort of fidelity and you don't want to ask somebody to type out a long email, or you don't want to type, usually people just resort to, okay, hey, let's hop on a Zoom call. Let's do a live synchronous call, right?
Yeah.
But that's where you break away from the async community, right? So that's what a lot of teams and remote workers, talking to clients, talking to teammates, everyone has like tons and tons of Zoom calls and live calendar meetings and bookings and things like that. And those are good in certain situations. Like, yeah, you do want to talk live sometimes, but in more and more cases, and we've seen this for years, not even just during the pandemic, but working remotely as I've been, I know you have been for many years too. I think a lot of the best conversations, the best collaborations actually happen asynchronously, and that's really where the product began and the problem began. I mean, my company's, my previous company I just recently sold, but that was a team of 25 people. We almost never had live meetings. I mean, literally, like we were just no meetings. Everything was async. We used video messaging. We used a lot of email. We used, chatting on Slack. Those are all different forms of async. But yeah, like there is this gap when you either want to show someone something, like record a video and show them. But the real gap that I found when I came into the idea of ZipMessage was it's difficult to ask somebody else to send me back a video, right?
So you may send like a Loom. I remember I experimented once, but like if the other person's not on Loom, they can't just like immediately jump in, right? That's what you're talking
exactly
about.
Yeah, exactly. The things like Loom I was using for years, but it's you record it and you send it off and it's just one way, right?
Yeah.
But if I'm talking to a client, or if I'm talking to a customer, or even a team member who I'm just starting to work with, maybe a freelancer or someone, All I want, the initial idea for ZipMessage was like, I just want to send somebody a link, just like I send a calendar link to someone. I want to be able to send my ZipMessage link so that they can just record. They click the link, they come to this page, they record right into the browser. Now they send me back a message, and we can go back and forth, and it threads the conversation down the page. So.
That's awesome. I'm going to put my marketing kind of product brain on for a second. And if we were to, you mentioned a word Fidelity, which I have a story about in a little bit, but when I look at like a value proposition, people are often just paying for one of three things. I mean, maybe all these, but one of these is primary: speed, certainty, and insight. So if we have Fidelity, what is, like, I'm trying to isolate like the core value of this product. Like, if we can communicate better, what are we doing? Are we increasing speed? Are we increasing, like, what is this, like, if you could only pick one, like, what is that core asset that you're creating here?
Well, I like to think about it like quality of the finished product, the finished output. So if you and I are working together on something, right?
Yeah.
And we get into an async conversation. No, actually, let's say we're on a live Zoom call together. You and me, we're working on some marketing campaign project. We need to put it together. We need to be creative and think about how we're going to create this thing and ship it and get it out and get it to work, right? So I might ask you something like, hey, what do you think we should do about this part of the campaign? How should we solve this problem? Well, if we're on a live Zoom call together, you have to come up with an answer for me right now. Like, right. You're on the spot. I asked you a question. You have to have something for me, an idea that's just ready to go. So you're a smart guy. You'll come up with something really good on the fly. But if we're async, I can send the same question to you. You can receive it. You can think about it. You can go take a walk and process it a little bit. You can come back and jot down some notes, maybe do some research, and then you can prepare your response, right? You can again jot down some notes, or you can record a message back to me. Maybe you play it back and say, you know what, I could communicate that a little bit tighter. Let me re-record it and then send it off back to Brian. And now I just received a much better, higher value idea, higher value input that you were able to contribute. And then I can do the same thing. I get your response and I come back with my ideas an hour later or the next morning. And we go back and forth that way. And so now we're actually, coming up with better ideas. We're contributing better ideas because we have space to process them and build them. And I'm seeing that every day when I talk to people I work with or people that I'm hiring or customers. These are just much more productive conversations, even though they're sort of like spread out over the course of a day or a couple days, instead of, having to book a live call, especially when we're like across time zones and stuff.
I love that. So it's not just like kind of the velocity of, or the efficiency or the clarity of the conversation. The actual end result is the quality, or basically the quality of whatever the purpose of that conversation was. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, that's the thing that I keep talking about when I'm on podcasts like this. It's like, yes, it's more convenient, right? We don't need to book time on each other's calendars. We can be across time zones. I could be at night, you could be in the morning, whatever. That's more convenient. But it's the higher quality. It's the space to think and contribute the best that we have to offer. And then of course you have video, screen sharing. You could show. You could do audio only. You could add attachments, type.
That's awesome. I often like to look back in history because patterns like repeat themselves, or at least they're similar. And when I think about the world before the printing press, and then what the printing press did for communication, and more recently, if you're old enough, you remember a world before email where everything was a meeting or a phone call. And then maybe your grandparents knew what the world was like before phones or something. And so we've been through this cycle before. So and then there's nuances, like, well, email's different from chat, like instant messenger or whatever. Like there's a bunch of nuances at the detail level. Totally. But I love seeing video. Is just, I don't know. I fell in love with video like 10 years ago for so many different reasons. And we're still just getting used to it. And you and I, as like power media creators, like we're kind of used to video, but the whole world is still kind of getting on this thing.
It's true. We do see that. I mean, when I got into doing this as a product, it was there are people who are, especially people who've been working remotely, they've been using tools like Loom. So, or, you see a lot of people like resorting to recording a YouTube video and making it unlisted so I could share it with someone. So these patterns have been around, or you drop a video into Dropbox so that you can send somebody the link, right? But then there are, you're doing like customer support. They're not necessarily that comfortable with like recording themselves on video quite yet, right? So you do see a mix of like comfort level with communicating on video. But I think as the whole world has gone remote working now. So, I think people are, what I'm thinking about with remote work, I'm curious your thoughts on it. Remote work is not new either, right? Like, sure.
Yeah. Like people wrote books like from their home,
yeah, totally. And I think that, and especially in our industry, we've been working remotely for years, way before the pandemic, right? But I think now it's at this like phase where it's like people are starting to optimize how they work remotely, right? Like they're just being a little bit more aware of like, okay, well, we all work remotely, but how do we communicate? What is the best cadence for actually having meetings versus not having meetings? And when are my teammates supposed to be working or not working? I think these lines are getting blurred, and routines in the workplace are really starting to change now. So yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely a very interesting time, and it's not all done yet. Like I think about that with the webcam, like the idea that you got to use to do like a high quality video with a blurred background or whatever that's like high definition. You got to get a regular point and shoot digital camera that has a video function, pipe it through this cam link thing and figure it out. And I'm like, we don't even have like a regular affordable webcam that doesn't look like bad, like the stock Zoom blur your background thing. And it'll get there. I think I saw something on Kickstarter coming up recently. Something like that. I think
I just saw that same thing. Yeah. That I mean, it does amaze me, like kind of how crappy Apple's webcam built into the MacBooks has been, but yeah, I've got a little Logitech. It sort of does the job, but yeah,
I do too. I don't know. I wonder if we have the same one. It's this one's like a $300 one or something like that, but I can't remember what it was called.
I can't remember. Yeah, something.
I mentioned
that you know what? I think the more important thing is the audio. Like have get a decent mic so that we can hear what you're saying.
That does matter. I mentioned Fidelity. I have a friend. He actually, his name is Dev Basu. He's like a brilliant SEO guy and marketer. He's got an agency called Powered by Search.
Yeah, I know Dev. Yeah.
Oh, you do? I think I learned that speed, certainty, and insight framework from him. But I asked on Twitter one time, what's the difference between like $100 course and like a $10,000 course or membership or whatever? And he just popped up out of the internet and said, in one word, Fidelity. So my next question is, what's Fidelity? And basically my takeaway was that, the reason people pay $15 a month for a master class, which is like an online learning thing where you learn from the best in the world about, hostage negotiation or comedy from Steve Martin or whatever. It's only 15 or $30 or whatever, because Steve Martin isn't going to help you with your jokes. But if you go into a coaching program that's high fidelity, you're going to get access to the leader or the coaches or some kind of support system that's more than just the content. So let's talk about ZipMessage and the concept in that kind of high fidelity environment. Like, what could a coach do with it in addition to have like self-study, self-paced courses and things like that?
Yeah, this is I really like this question, the idea of thinking about fidelity when it comes to coaching and teaching online. I mean, we see a lot of coaches using ZipMessage for this sort of thing, and it's actually a lot of them are like it's additive, or it's a supplement to whatever direct coaching they're already doing, right? So some coaches will have like a live one-on-one coaching session, and then they use ZipMessage to have follow-up questions in between sessions, without booking another call, but you can still ask a quick question. The coach can respond on video, maybe go back and forth, or maybe a coaching and a student gets a a dedicated conversation that might last months. I mean, I actually have long-term conversations with friends and advisors that last months, flowing down the page, just back and forth, So we see a lot of that. The other thing that I see is a little bit more like like a scalable coaching model, where a coach can. We have this thing called intake forms or intake pages, where you can send out your zipmessage.com/coaching name or your brand name or whatever, and then that's where others can submit new messages or new questions into you. And each of those breaks out a new one-to-one conversation.
And that's public or private, or you have the option?
You have the option.
Okay.
By default, we give you a public link, so you could like tweet it out and do like an ask me anything. But we see a lot of coaches just sharing that within their private community, their private forums. We just launched the ability to embed that and all ZipMessage stuff like on your own website. So if you have LifterLMS, right? If you're using that, you can embed it in a WordPress page and that sort of thing.
Real quick, is that like a piece of code, or is there a plugin, a WordPress plugin, or how do you get it into a WordPress site?
Yeah, I mean, right now it's an iframe piece of code. It works with a basic HTML block on any page in WordPress. But yeah, we plan to have a WordPress plugin to kind of wrap that up and make it easy to pop in. But yeah, right now it's cut and paste, drop it into any page.
That's cool. I see, one of the big gaps I see in the market with courses and coaching and learning is that people spend a lot of time focused on the content, but and maybe being strategic about it, but like the idea of community design or conversation design, people just don't think about it. It's almost like an afterthought. Like they're at the very end, they're getting ready to launch, they're building their pricing table, and they're like, and it includes like group coaching, Facebook group, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, well, let's like consciously design those things. What do you want the conversation flow to feel like? If you were a client of your dream coach and they were communicating with you, what if you couldn't make the time? Like, how would you want it to work? Like, people don't think about this stuff.
You're totally right. The community is sort of like an afterthought, but it's like the most valuable piece in so many of these programs and courses, right? I mean, I'm a member of some courses and like programs mainly for the community aspect. Even if I'm like no longer very active or actively going through the course material, I'll remain subscribed just to have access to the leaders, especially the community at large. So I happen to, in my experience, that's my favorite way to learn. I'll learn a couple like the theory, if you will, from like books and courses. But what I've always been a visual learner and a learn by doing. And the next best thing besides trying to hack it together myself would be to watch somebody do the thing or talk to somebody and be involved in work, in collaborating with them and learning their approach to being creative and building something, right? And that to me is the best way. So whether it's directly with a coach or in a community, like I learned full stack web development over the last couple of years, and in the early parts of those years, I joined like one is really valuable to me, the Go Rails community for learning Ruby on Rails. But there've been a few others, and I'll just hop in there just to see like, well, what do like the professionals do in these situations, and learn, and ask questions. So.
Yeah, and then another kind of aspect to that is what I call the support system. So when you put together a learning opportunity, what are they going to get? They're going to get like a contact form or like an email address? Or are they going to get a community thing like a Facebook group or a proprietary thing? Are they going to, is there going to be a schedule of calls? And but also the support. When I first saw and learned about ZipMessage I was like, that is the kind, for my particular learning style, I'm like you, a visual communicator and whatnot, I would prefer to like both ask for help and receive feedback or assistance via the video medium. I was like, yeah, genius. Now what you have to do, your job, Brian, is just to remove all the friction to make that totally. Like not hurt.
That's, right? I mean, that's what I try to work on every single day. Literally right before this call, I was reworking our like onboarding flow to like, how can I make this less friction for a brand new user, right? one of my favorite things to do right now is I send messages to our new ZipMessage users. So they're like a day or two into their free account on ZipMessage, and then I'll be one of the very first people to send them a message through their intake page and say like, hey, how's it going? And then I've had some incredible back and forth conversations with customers and learnings about, what brought them here, what problem are they trying to solve, what are they doing in their business where they want to, do a little bit more async communication and video and stuff like that.
This is a challenge of software to make like the hard easy. I mean, I think we all saw this, especially in recent times with Zoom solved this quite well, where somebody who wasn't really used to Zoom or anything, they just click on a link and now they're in a meeting. Like that's it. But like all the complexity of like making that possible has, they've just really done a good job there, focusing on removing the friction.
For sure.
What do you see as like some of the key things, in software? We talk about a customer becoming activated, onboarded, like you're actually using your own product to kind of get them experiencing the other side and trying to get them into a point where they understand it, they know what to do, and they're successful with it. What do successful ZipMessages do kind of in that first 7 days of using the product?
Yeah. So ZipMessage is actually a pretty different product from everything else that I've done before, in that it's a viral product. So we came out with a free plan. So, users it's not just a free trial. Like you could actually use it forever for free on the free plan. And the thinking there is to just get more people using it and sharing ZipMessage links with their coworkers, with their clients, with their customers. And we're seeing it spread that way. So what we try to do is, like, number one, make it super easy and fast to sign up, and then create your first message and start recording it. And then you finish that up and you can share the link right off with someone else. That's kind of like the goal number one in our product onboarding. But the very next thing is we want them to be able to easily share it with someone that they're working with. And then the nice thing there is, like, you see a lot of these like software apps that, like, I'm always actually caught I always think that this is a little bit of a weird pattern. Like, how like every SaaS app has like an onboarding experience, like a wizard, a 1-2
setup wizard.
Setup wizard, right? And usually like step 2 is like, hey, send an invite to your team members so that they can accept an invite and become team members in your account, like right now, before I'm even in the product yet, right?
Right.
Which
it's the wrong time. Yeah.
It's definitely the wrong time. Like I need to get situated. I need to figure out, is this?
I need to trust you. I need to know if this is going to work. Yeah.
I'm not about to blast emails out to my coworkers on this, So I always found that a little bit strange. And like one of the, again, like the core problem that I wanted to solve with this is make it just super frictionless. Yes, we do have the concept of inviting team members into your account to be able to manage things, but you could just send a link to anyone, like a customer, a client, a freelancer, a new hire, and they don't need to accept an invite. They don't need to log into anything. They can just click and they can be in a conversation with you, and that's a big concept for us, is just make it frictionless and easy, like as easy to send off an email, basically.
How do you, I'm putting you into sales mode here. How do you handle an objection I would have whenever I'm doing anything related to video is like bandwidth and storage. Like I see this a lot in the LMS space with like video hosting, like where people are like, okay, it's this price, but if you pass this limit, and then people get all worried, but they need to, they first need to understand, like, like, oh, well, when am I going to hit this? Is it going to be next month, or am I going to have to upgrade? Is this something I don't even have to worry about for years because I'm just getting started? So how, and just as some like previous examples, I think we've all confronted this perhaps with like file storage with systems like Dropbox and Google Drive or whatever, where it feels like a fair deal. Like, in fact, it feels like a very generous deal. And I know people might be watching this later, so your pricing might change or whatever, but how do you think about this challenge of storage that's fair for both the company and the customer, and even feels like a no-brainer to the customer?
Yeah, that's a good question. It was one of the very earliest learnings when I was talking to the very first few people about ZipMessage, and I heard that again and again come up, like sort of, um, uh, like will I run out of storage, or will the pricing be based on how much video I record? So it was pretty obvious that we had to go with a model that is unlimited. Like even
Okay. I mean, that's straight. That's music to a customer's ear or prospect's ears.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's unlimited in terms of like the number of messages, number of recordings you can make. If you're on the free plan, obviously it's video hosting, so we need to limit the free plan. It's limited in terms of the length of each recording. So, as we're recording this right now, it's 1 minute length of each individual message on the free plan, but you can have multiple.
The thread
messages.
could go forever.
Yeah, thread can go forever. I mean, once you upgrade to our first paid plan, that limit is lifted, and then you could have like 20-minute, 30-minute messages if you want to.
Yeah.
And then the only other limit that we have on the free is the history. So you can have as many conversations going and messages going right now as you want, but once they're 30 days or older, they basically expire in your free account.
That sounds fair.
Yeah.
And how do you think about that?
Once you upgrade, paying gets unlimited history. So especially if you're going to publish videos like on your website, you want them available. We always make videos downloadable even on the free, so you could like record once, get the MP4, and put it somewhere else if you want. But once you're on a paid plan, we host it for you and serve it up for you. As long as your account is going.
Sounds like a fair deal to me. And see, this is the thing, is a lot of this has been figured out in software before. Like that history thing, when you were describing that, I was like, oh yeah, that's how Slack works. These challenges, I often like to think, when thinking about things like product or customer success, like, what do you love that you use? I love that Slack's like free, pretty much free. And then it even like downgrades your account when you're like, somebody's been inactive for a paid user, whatever. It like takes care of you. I'm like, that is freaking cool. That's sticky. So
yeah, totally. And that was one of those, like, how I'm sure you've seen this, where you get like lots of feature requests and you're not quite sure how to make sense of it all, where it's like, should we go this way or that way? That pricing thing I heard just again and again. Like,
that's why I had to ask, man.
I don't want to see limits. And like, okay, I was like, well, that makes my job easy. So,
Yeah. I remember when we did that, we did like a unlimited websites for our highest plan, and it felt scary at the time, but now several years past that, totally the right thing to do.
I just think it's so much more important to get people using it regularly and make it like a no-brainer. Like basically the thing that people were saying with that is like, they just never want to think about like, should I use a ZipMessage right now? Or like, is this like ZipMessage worthy? Am I going to burn through my ZipMessage account? Right. I don't ever want people thinking about that. When in doubt, just say like, yeah, let me fire up a ZipMessage. Like, I don't ever want to see hesitation with that, basically.
That makes total sense. And you're definitely inside the mind of your customer there. What about like, is this more for like one-on-one communication, or can it be group-like?
Yeah, so it can be group-like. You can share a conversation, bring in 3, 5, 10 people into a single thread, and everyone can contribute messages. Again, conversations can be public or private. So you have that option to either lock it down to only members only, or public, in that like anybody who you give the link to can have access.
What about, well, before we go to the agencies I want to talk about, is this like a replacement for video hosting, or do you see it as more of something you would have? Like, let's say you have a site that has like some marketing videos, or maybe you have an LMS site that has course videos. Do you see this as like being also kind of taking that video hosting job, or is that really left?
I'm not sure. I don't think so. I think I think there's definitely still a place for things like YouTube and Wistia and
Vimeo.
Vimeo for like these especially if you're going to do a lot of like editing, you know, you'll use something locally like a screen flow or something to really make like a professional video. And then, you know, with ZipMessage, you could upload a video like that into ZipMessage. You don't have to use our browser recorder. So if you have something more prepared, you could upload it in. But yeah, hosting on a website, like, yes, you could embed a ZipMessage player, but if it's on YouTube or a Vimeo or something, that works too. I think it's more of a replacement for what you might use for like messaging and conversations, you know? So if you're using like one of these like one way, like you know, whatever solutions you're using to record a video and send somebody a link to it, like a Dropbox link or a Loom or something, that's where ZipMessage sort of plays in that space a little bit.
I think I just popped in my head, like, I always like to try to get video testimonials, and they're really hard to get from people,
Yeah, we
but
see a lot
using
of that
this,
too. Yeah.
this would be great for that. There's this idea of portable content where, you know, there's a lot of competition at the desk, in the laptop or in the computer. But then when you go mobile, if we look at audio content, there's just music, podcasts, and books. It's not as competitive when you're portable. Can you do ZipMessage on a mobile device? Like if I'm inspired and I want to hit somebody like, oh yeah, that thing that client is struggling with, and I'm on top of the mountain on my hike, and I'm like gonna just send them that idea right in the inspiration moment. Can I do it from the phone?
Yep. Yeah, everything is mobile friendly, mobile optimized. You can do it from any mobile browser, iPhone, Android. It all works. You could record, you could watch back videos. Everything that I've ever really built, and it's always been web based. So like web apps and web design websites. I've always been a strong proponent of responsive web design, mobile first design. And that's certainly what I did with ZipMessage. You know, that's another little like pet peeve with a lot of SaaS products these days. Less so these days, but I still see a lot of this where like they sort of treat the mobile experience like an afterthought, and they either don't build for mobile at all, or they sort of bolt on some like half-built mobile experience later. You can design a website that is mobile friendly and works with the mobile browser, and that's what we did. You know, so I actually I like to save the web app to my home screen. It basically works like an iPhone app. You know?
What if I make a mistake in my recording or whatever?
Yeah, somebody actually just asked me that this morning. Yeah, so you could, the way that it works is you record and then it finishes, but it doesn't actually post yet. And then you have a chance to watch it back, and you can click a button that says discard and re-record. Or then you're finally ready to record and you click, send the message. So they give you that option.
That's awesome. Well, let's dig into the agency model a little bit. If somebody, let's say, is running a web design business and they build WordPress sites for clients, either in a bunch of niches or in a focused niche, how could they, there's kind of two angles here. There's like working with my team, and then there's also communicating with the client. You're right.
Yeah.
A lot of people hate meetings, and a lot of meetings are done poorly. How can, like, if you were to give somebody a piece of advice and be like, I really think you could run that whole like client communication thing asynchronously with ZipMessage, like what advice you have to get them moving in that direction instead of having like constant scheduling or recurring meetings, update meetings, and things like that?
Yeah, I see async in general and ZipMessage being used in, I would say, three big areas in the agency world, right? So one is like you said, definitely with clients, right? You're gonna have like a live call with a client, maybe like a kickoff call and whatnot. But once you start working together, so like delivering work to a client and getting the client's feedback on the design or on the writing work or whatever it is that you did for the client, that can and probably should be done asynchronously. Again, it's one of those things that I think is better because you can log their feedback, you can link back to the thing that they said, instead of it like, because you'll get into like an hour-long phone call with a client, and then they gave you some key feedback on like minute 23. How are you going to find that later, right? So and then of course nobody wants to sit on like constant calls,
I'm totally
with
guilty of
clients all
that. I
day.
remember presenting like websites to clients like on a call, and you're kind of like forcing them to like look at it, give you feedback live, and then, maybe
Yeah.
later they give you some more or whatever. But like if I'm going to review like a design or some like online business that somebody just built for me on my website, like I want to kind of sit with it a little bit
Yeah. I
before
mean,
I give my feedback, not have people like staring at me like, what do you like? What do you don't like?
yeah,
Like,
exactly. I mean, like back in the day, we would do like a design presentation. We're going to present to you our deliverables, right? And it's like
yeah.
so much pressure, and so we do see a lot of, especially like web design agencies and clients going back and forth on design feedback. And also like with like marketing agencies. So I'm a client of a couple of freelancers, and what I like to do, especially people who are working on marketing stuff, is send me like a weekly report. They'll send me some like metrics and things like that. But I like to see them walk through, walk through my Google Analytics account and give me 5 minutes on your analysis on what you're seeing, like patterns, trends, what's up, what's down this week, and what can we do. So I like to receive those kinds of like reports via ZipMessage just to get like their read on things every week, and then I can go back with some questions. So that's like the client interaction stuff. The other one, of course, is just working with the team, collaborating. These days it's across time zones a lot. So, whether it's like daily stand-ups or, weekly check-ins, instead of hopping on a Zoom call, you can just, get that back and forth. And we have again, like a mix of different tools, right? So we have a Slack integration so that you can connect to ZipMessage and like thread those video conversations into your Slack workspace. And then sort of the third one, maybe mixed in with that, is hiring. This is an area that I love going async.
Oh, wow. I know where you're going. This is awesome. One of my secret hiring tricks is I ask people to record a 5-minute video about like why they want the job, why they think they're a fit, and but it's communicates volumes about like
Totally. Yeah.
all the other stuff. But keep going. I
Yeah.
totally see the
So,
value here.
and there's actually two sides on the hiring part, right? So there's
Yeah.
one, you could use the intake form. Say you put your job posting up somewhere, and you say like, respond to this job, and if you could send me a 2-minute message, just go to this link and record yourself. So that way you can get a lot higher fidelity applications, right? But then what I like to do is, I'll probably do like a live Zoom call just to like a meet and greet, see if there's like a personality fit here with the person. But that's not enough to know if they're actually right for the job. So if that goes well, then I'll do like a week or a 2-week long async interview with a candidate. So usually like a freelancer that I'm going to be working with. Not quite ready to like invite them into my Slack workspace yet. But I do want to sort of do a deep dive asynchronously. Show me your screen, show me some recent projects that you worked on. Let's hash those out, or let's hash out like what I want to work on, what we will be working on together. Let's get into the details, and then I'll know. It's almost like we've sort of started to work together a little bit. And you start to see like, how do they prepare their responses? What is the best that they can contribute in response? What is their response time? Are they taking all week to get back to you, or do they get back in like a business day? You learn so much. And if I could do that with like 3 or 4 candidates, I end up with a much better hire and a much better relationship going forward.
Super smart and super, super efficient. Since you're like kind of an anti-meeting guy, I mean that with mad love. I think it's super cool. When do you think that a meeting is important? Like a synchronous,
Yeah.
let's say Zoom. Like when does that? Like if you were only going to do absolutely essential meetings, what are some ideas of
Yeah.
those?
That's a good question. One is like I was just saying, I like live calls for just personality fit.
Yeah.
And if we've been working together a while, I like having a live Zoom call, call it like team culture, like we're we're not here on the call to do any real work together. We're just here to hang out for an hour and talk about our kids.
It's rapport building
or the weekend. Yeah, rapport building. Like, that kind of stuff. Like, and I have done that stuff asynchronously too, but you want to just get to know someone, especially if they live across the world from you, so that's one. But generally, like when you're getting into like more productive work, like creative work, I actually do prefer async.
Like projects.
Like project work. I like to keep that stuff async. Again, because of the quality of the interaction, but also because it's like easy to log that stuff and refer back to it and that kind of stuff. But yeah, like live calls is more like, rapport building, culture, meeting people. Podcasts, I always love to hop on the mics and talk on air. I think that's important.
I have seen you create some kind of like podcast like content with ZipMessage. With some people. I was it Chris Lima, somebody you were talking to, or maybe there's a group of people, and I thought that was cool. Just like experimenting in that like content.
Totally, I started experimenting that earlier this year. I want to do more of that. The idea is to basically create a podcast asynchronously, and also what we're starting to do right now, we're developing some articles for our blog and getting quotes from people, sending them a zip message. Hey, can you contribute to this? We're doing an article all about Zoom fatigue. Can you tell me about your experience with that on video? And then we can embed the video on the page.
I love that. That's this is like for anybody who's trying to create some content marketing, doing a roundup post like this can be very powerful. And when I've done roundup posts in the past, I always try to like frame the ask and like, hey, if you could just take a minute, just 1 or 2 sentence response. Like, I'm not trying to get somebody to write a guest post. I'm just asking for a little bit of attention, but I could totally see. And people sometimes wouldn't even send me the thing. They would actually create a video and send it to me in Dropbox. Like, and they actually gave a lot more value because they could just speak and they're not trying to like type paragraphs and stuff.
Totally.
So,
one of the, the other sort of like objection or question that I hear a lot about ZipMessage is like, well, what am I going to do with all these like videos that I receive? Now I got to sit and watch all these videos. Right. So like, for me, like one of the very first features we had to build into the thing was have a speed control, be able to like 2x the speed when you listen back.
Because people can read faster than they can listen, right? Or, people are, what am I trying to say here? Video can be slower than like reading, right?
Yeah. I think it's interesting. Like I tend to
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I do 2x on most messages through ZipMessage. Like I just like to 2x just to get through the message, and like I can hear it and process it pretty quickly, but it's still spoken, so there's still like more information being shared than just the words themselves, right? So, and we have the automatic transcription feature too, so you could, if you're in like a quiet place somewhere, you could just read it. You could read it, yeah. But you do, when you just read it, you sort of miss the body language and the emphasis and things like that. So, or if they're showing something on the screen,
That's awesome. I kind of want to close it out just going back to this idea of conversation design. Like, one of the things that I think about when I think about conversions is that it's a quote I have, is that I optimize for conversations, not conversions. And the reason I do that is because conversions come from conversations. So we have a phone number on our website, we have a contact form, we have live chat. We're on social media. We'll meet people where the conversation is. I know people have different communication styles. Some people prefer to just the written word. Some people prefer visual communication. Some people are auditory. Some people are visual, all that kind of stuff. And there's all the different personality types and how people are in what format are they the most comfortable. So if there's somebody who's creating an online learning platform, what's kind of your final words about how to kind of use ZipMessage to the fullest to create that kind of pathway for support and communication that way, either for pre-sales, like to get people to buy, or even after in the actual product delivery.
Yeah, I like the way you put that, like optimizing for conversations. I'm the same way. Like almost every message that I like, if I'm writing an email or something or a chat, I almost always respond with like, let me know what questions you have, or feature requests, or like, I'm always hungry for questions. I want them to ask questions because that's what that when somebody asks me a question, it's something that they need, or that they're trying to build, or they're trying to achieve, or something like that. So that gives me an insight into what their end goal is. And that's what I'm here to do, is to try to solve for that. And so the more I can learn about that, the better. I mean, in my email signature in Gmail, it's my name, and then it says like, respond to me on video, with a link to zipmessage.com/Brian. That's my intake page, right? But yeah, I'm always trying to gather information. So if you're, especially if you're a coach or course creator, you've probably already connected to some audience, and you probably have some insight into a common goal that audience is trying to achieve. Like they're trying to improve their sales team, or they're trying to learn web design, or whatever it is that you teach. The deeper understanding of what their end goal is, like, why are they trying to learn web design? Why are they trying to learn web development? It's because they want to pursue a career in that, or they want to build a product with that. And you get that through conversations, through talking to more and more, and seeing the same questions come up 10, 20, 50 times.
I love how you've really focused this product on the problem, and I want to encourage everybody to go to zipmessage.com and check it out. And you have a free plan, which makes it easy for people to try it out. There's a lot of video tools out there. Like we mentioned Loom, we mentioned Bonjoro. There's this like testimonial asking thing called Video Ask. But you don't need all these like desperate, video communication tools. You just need ZipMessage to have asynchronous video communication. I think that's the beauty of design, like really focusing on this problem and let people use it in different ways, and really just be the best at solving that problem.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, we are seeing that mix. It's really good for intakes, but then the thing that almost surprised me in the early days was like, yeah, they do it for intakes, but then they're hungry for async back and forth conversation and making it frictionless. So, and I mean, I know your audience is on WordPress. We do now integrate pretty closely with WordPress. We'll be coming out with a plugin pretty soon, but today you could already embed it into any page. So I'm really excited to start working with people, building community sites and things like that to get it really integrated.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, that's Brian Casel. He's over at zipmessage.com. I also really like Brian's podcast. It's called Bootstrapped Web. So if you want to get kind of a behind the scenes view of what's going on at ZipMessage, that's a great place to go. So go to zipmessage.com. Brian, thanks for coming back on the show. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, Chris, this was fun. Anytime.